This has been the perennial question. Just how weak are they? Damian Sassower, haven't seen you in a long time. Chief Emerging Markets Credit Strategist.
Happy
Bloomberg
Halloween.
Intelligence. Happy Halloween.
You sick of
going
me yet?
evidently as a toxic brew. But I'm curious from your vantage point, how weak is this economy?
It's pretty weak. It reiterates the fragility of the economic recovery in China. I mean, we knew it was going to be a weak number. We had the 8-day golden week leading in the beginning of October. But at the end of the day, for manufacturing, the manufacturing PMI to slip back into contraction, for non-man to slip back into weakness, I mean, not quite a contraction, it's a pretty big deal. And on the small firm side, which is responsible for most of the employment in that economy, it's terribly weak, way into contraction. And, things are just not getting better. We expect now 5.2% GDP growth this year, 4.5% in 2024, and we expect a rate cut before the end of the year.
Does this matter? If ultimately the question hasn't been how weak is the economy, the question has been how much firepower are Chinese authorities going to put behind it? Is that really just squarely the question, and continues to be after they have made initial moves, but some people are saying maybe not enough?
Well, Lisa, we talked about this yesterday, right?
Did.
I mean, the 130
You were here
billion.
yesterday?
I was. Where were you? You weren't here?
No, I was on sabbatical.
Okay. $130 billion expansion of their fiscal deficit into year-end is kind of unprecedented from a China perspective, right? And the fact is they're going to need to cut rates in order to kind of smooth out liquidity in the market in order to digest all that debt they're going to have to issue in order to fund that, right? So, it's going to be an interesting year-end turn, I think, in China, which has now, quite frankly, become a funding currency on par with your friend, the Japanese yen. And so, that's really what we're talking about here. And I think some of the measures, sorry to cut you off, Tom, I just have to say it, that the BOJ have taken today.
Pharaoh. Well, continue.
Carry on.
Carry on.
Were priced in by the market. So all this hype about 160 euro yen, 155 dollar yen, I think, look, you see the market's already bringing it back a bit. Levels are still really low in Japan, and rate differentials are still really wide when compared to Europe and the US.
I want you to explain how you make money in the Damian Sassower world with currency depreciation. This ever stronger dollar. If we had President Trump now, he'd be apoplectic about the strong dollar right now. I've got FX depreciation in a frontier economy like Japan. I've got FX depreciation in the EM like Indonesia. You pick the country better than me. What in God's name does that do to my EM total return? Right,
total return is exactly the point. There's an interest rate component and there's a spot component. Spot is simply movement in the currency itself, which kind of reflects the theme of the day. Maybe it's growth, maybe it's inflation, what have you, but it's that interest rate return which is key, right? So you're not getting much of a return, in places like Japan and China and a lot of the low-yielding Asian blocs. So, they have tended to be good funding currencies relative to the high yielders in Brazil, Colombia. Notice I'm using both of those economies because Colombia announces on interest rates today. Their policy rate's 13.25%.
So what do they do? Okay, stop there. This is, folks, this is why we have Damian on, even when I'm not here. They have a rate of 13%, which everybody out here understands business doesn't run. I get that. What do they do besides call 1-800-GORGIEVA and say, help us? What's their choice set?
I think the risk when you're investing in a high-yielding economy like a Colombia is that it's very liquid, right? And once you're in that economy and clipping that coupon, getting out isn't as easy.
You're addicted to it.
Getting out isn't as easy. It's just not like overnight. Like you can sell your Colombian peso, get your dollars back. It takes time, There's a T plus something days until you can actually pull your money out. And in that amount of time, if your block is big enough, you can move the market quite considerably.
Okay, fine. But then does that mean we're towards, pick the date, 1992, 1994, the August of 1998? Are we getting near a point where EM, there's not enough oil in the engine to make the Damian Sassower world go like the Detroit Lions 6-2?
Lisa, Tom's been reading my research because he knows that this reminds me a lot of the mid-90s period. It really, truly does. To me, it's just my opinion.
I don't know what I'm talking about, and it does.
Things are breaking offshore. I say it all the time. In frontier markets that no one cares about, like Nigeria, Kenya, Ghana, currencies have been devalued by 50%. Things are breaking, but we just don't feel it here yet. And so this reminds me a lot of the mid-90s, but this time we're not as close to it as we were in the mid-90s when Asia started to roll over, Thailand, the Asian debt crisis, the tequila crisis of Mexico, et cetera. But nevertheless, it does feel to me to be quite similar.
Is there a long-term capital management? If you're going to go to the mid-1990s and you talk about something, if you're going to talk about something breaking, always the gloom. He was basically leading it off.
I don't like to think so. Citadel. No, I'm kidding. I'm joking. I never said that. But what I would say is, look, there are big firms out there that are not necessarily your traditional hedge funds, your traditional banks, your traditional players, non-bank financial institutions, whatever you want to call it, shadow banking, et cetera. Yeah, there could be some pockets of distress that bubble to the surface when things get really tight. And I think what we're seeing in cross-asset vol right now, Lisa, is the market valuations are finally responding to tight financial conditions. And we see that just alone if you look at rate vol, which is trading at a premium to equity volatility.
Honestly, we've been trying to grapple with what would break given how quickly yields have gone up. And we're talking now about the Bank of Japan potentially abandoning yield curve control. We're talking about the potential for economic growth in the engine in China rolling over. Jeremy Stein, the former Fed governor, who is very colorful with his words, said in a recent Bloomberg article, if you had told me 2 years ago that the Fed would hike by this much in such a short time, I would have said that they would leave dead bodies littered across the corporate credit landscape. I really don't have any good story to explain why things have instead remained so resilient. Are you saying that they're not? It just is taking longer.
First thing I'm saying is I have to apologize to Ken Griffin because Citadel is a wonderful company and they employ a lot of my friends and they invest really well. And I just want to apologize. I just got this vision of Ken Griffin calling me now. Anyway, no, I'm kidding. So the question was, I think, the resilience of investors in this environment?
Just in terms of when you talk about the emerging market complex, the fragilities that you're seeing, do they look akin to what people were expecting when you raise rates by 500 basis points in less than 2 years?
Yeah, no, I think so. I've been calling for this for a while. I think a lot of my peers have been calling for it. You can't really invest in EM local until the U.S. really starts to cut. And the U.S. seems to be on hold for a lot longer. And you know, that runway seems to be expanding by the minute. So, you know, I think that's why EMFX is on its back. EM local rates, I mean, they've given up so much performance in just the last month alone. And I think it's justified.
Right. Robert Mundell, like 2000-ish, dollarize. He told Canada as an EM to dollarize against the United States. Should Argentina dollarize now?
They don't have the ability to.
They don't. Please
They
explain that to our
generally
audience.
don't have
This
enough
is
dollars in the system to function, and that's what dollarization means. Peru's a little bit of a different. They don't have dollars.
They don't have the wealth.
Right. Correct.
They don't have the balance sheet. When people say the United Kingdom is poor, it's about wealth.
Correct.
Strange word.
Correct. And you know what I've been looking at, which is really interesting, just taking you back to Japan and looking at domestic household wealth. You want to talk about domestic households in Japan are funding in local currency and investing abroad. They all have little, you know, trading accounts set up where they're basically buying dollars. They're buying Brazilian real. They're buying Indonesian rupiah in their PAs, in their personal accounts right now as we speak. And those volumes are exploding and have been for some time now. And that is just indicative of what's going on in Japan, that they've kept yields so low for so long that is embedded in the sentiment in how these households have to operate and invest their money in order to kind of pay for things.
But the distinction here is the people of Japan and other nations are wealthy, quote unquote. This strange word wealth, folks. Versus Argentina doesn't have the underlying wealth to dollarize.
That's correct. Yeah. No, I mean that economy would not be able to function. Would cease to function. You know, if they tried to dollarize. I don't know how Malay would be able to do that. Malay is obviously the one who is a proponent of that. You know, we have a big election coming up in the next few weeks in Argentina. But I mean, there's also it looks like it's going to be Sergio Massa again, which is unbelievable. It's more of the same in Argentina. How does the IMF continue to get behind them?
Did you, I mean, you're big buds with Ken Griffith and Citadel. Did you go to Disneyland in Tokyo?
I didn't. I would have liked to. I'm definitely not getting the invite for next year. No, I don't think so. Not after today.
Damian, is he with us tomorrow as well? It's like every day with Damian. I feel like I'm on The View. You know, I got to do my Whoopi imitation.
Oh, good luck with that.
I feel like I'm in The View here.
Next Halloween.
Damian, thank you so much. Please come by tomorrow as well. Damian Sassower, brilliant on emerging markets. He's with Bloomberg.
The quickest way